Howdy, and welcome to the channel. My name's Josh, and today I want to talk to you about accountability. Mainly, the power of accountability. This is something that has been a huge part of my own personal journey into, my own growth and understanding things. And I personally believe that accountability is really one of the best things you can learn to do. And I have a couple notes here that I will be going from. But first of all, the reason I feel like accountability is important is because taking accountability, whether it's for your experiences, your emotions, even your perspectives, allows you to be more open and empathetic to others, and as well as more compassionate to others, as well as yourself. So this is kind of a two-way thing, because once you can recognize your own kind of experiences that you have, like the emotions you have, even if you can recognize them as separate from someone else, or separate from what others are experiencing, then you can kind of understand you can kind of give yourself compassion to understand, like, okay, this is something that belongs to me. I also feel like taking accountability for your choices, and this is, I think, one of the more important ones, even if it's something that you don't feel like you had a choice, like it is still a choice. Once you kind of take accountability for everything that's happened, every choice you've made in your life, that itself empowers you to make better choices and take better actions. Because once you're at a point that you feel like, okay, this is a hard choice, then you still recognize that even the harder choice is still a choice, and it's something that you can still do if you feel like that is going to be better, take you in a better place than the easier choice. So taking accountability for whether it's your experiences or your choices is beneficial. Two of the books that I've read that I feel like are worth reading to really understand this concept. One is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And that's a book that he basically discusses how choices affect you in the long term. So a lot of the examples he uses is like, if you choose to stay home and sit on the couch, right, that itself is a choice. And when you repeatedly make that choice, it becomes a habit, then that's going to lead you to being, out of shape. Whereas if you made the choice to even just go for a walk every morning, you'd probably be happier and healthier and in better shape. And that would probably lead you to make other better choices, such as, being more involved in fitness or more physically related activities. So that's one. And then the other one is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And this one, he calls it extreme ownership. I don't think there's really anything extreme about it. I think that it is, being able to take total accountability is not itself extreme. That is really the goal, being able to take total accountability for yourself, just yourself, which I'll get into that later. But in his examples, he talks about like if some people aren't doing what you want them to do, then there's a good possibility that you're not making yourself clear enough and explaining what it is that you want. And as we all know, if you don't explain what you want clearly or clearly enough, and just because you think that you're explaining it clearly enough doesn't mean that you are, don't expect to get what it is that you want. So those are the books I recommend. Now, when it comes to taking accountability, there are things that you have to understand and realize. One is realizing that everything you do or have done is and always has been your choice. Whether you're aware of it or not, right? If you responded to something reactively, even if it's an unconscious choice, it was still a choice. And this is part of, like, again, when you start to take accountability of that, this is what starts to make to where you, like, when you recognize and you can learn to step back and make better ones, you first have to be able to take accountability for the choices that you didn't realize that you made. So yes, this also includes staying in bad relationships, right? If you stay in a bad or abusive relationship, if you want to get better and not keep getting in bad relationships, you need to first understand that staying in that bad relationship was your choice. Inaction itself is also a choice. It is basically the act of not acting. So if you are sitting there, it's like, well, maybe I'll just do nothing instead. Like, that itself is also a choice. So I think that's pretty plain and clear. I don't think that we need to beat that one down too much. No one made you do or be anything. Who you are, how you show up, and how you react or respond, again, is your choice. And this comes back to everything you do is a choice. You'll see that these kind of layer on top of each other, or they're kind of redundant on top of each other. So if you've had experiences with a lot of bad people, say like you've gone out dating, this is actually one I've heard is, whether it's from men or women, especially in the dating sphere, is, a lot of women date bad men, or a lot of men date bad women. And that's not say all of them, but like they date people who are not mature enough to be in a relationship yet. And they say, well, every time I meet these people, they made me the way I am. No, you chose to be that way, right? Who you are is your responsibility. How you get to decide how you show up in life. You get to decide how you show up in other people. You get to decide how you show up for yourself. And this kind of comes back to that idea of self-respect, or knowing your own self-worth. And not in an inflated sense, but in a very healthy sense of, you deserve someone that gives you respect. So, yeah, and no one makes you be anything. You're the one that made you that way. Once you were old enough to decide how you wanted to live your life and you were no longer under your parents' rule, like even then, before that, you have some autonomy. There are still choices there, even though they're hard. But once you kind of get to that point where you are on your own, you're responsible for yourself, there's no one else you can blame other than yourself for who and what you are. So choose to be what it is you want to be. Your perspectives, your emotions, and experiences, including your expectations, are also yours and only yours, no one else's. This is going back to that kind of empathy and compassion argument. Your emotional, you're not just your experiences, but your emotional experiences, what you feel, right? I've always said that emotions are not inherently good or bad. They are just signals. Like I would say a good example is, if you're sad, everyone says sad is this negative emotion, but if you're sad because you lost a loved one, the positive in that is that you're sad because you love that person. So emotions themselves are not inherently good or bad. They just are. And your emotions are yours. They don't, just because you feel hurt doesn't necessarily mean that the other person is hurting you. There are many reasons why you might feel hurt. It could be insecurities that other person is not aware of. And so to blame them for your emotional state in that context is incorrect. Now, this is where communication comes into play, and be able to say, hey, like when you did this, this is how I felt. You own that emotion. Same thing with your experiences. Even in shared experiences, right, there's still nuance. Just because you can relate to someone else does not necessarily mean that you know what their experience was. You know exactly what it was like for them, because chances are you don't, unless they actually explain it to you in detail. And this again comes from the fact that you need to step back and see how that, not how you would respond to those situations, but what is it in those situations that made that person kind of like, how it shaped them, right? Like how it influenced the choices they made in life, and how they choose to either reach out or protect themselves, or whatever choices they're making. And then, of course, expectations. I think this is the biggest one, which is just because you expect, or just because you would do something one way doesn't necessarily mean other people are going to respond the same way. Just because you expect to be treated a certain way doesn't mean that's how others see it. I think this again comes back to this idea, I think, like love languages and things like that. It's like, just because you think that, you are like physical touch, I think is good. Not everyone is comfortable with physical touch. I think everyone kind of needs it. I think human contact, especially physical contact, is essential to living a healthy life. But not everyone's comfortable with it. So to sit there and be like, well, I would do it this way, so I expect you to do it the same. Sorry, but that's not how life works. So know your expectations and own your expectations and keep them in check, because you can't just expect everyone to do things the way you would do them. Just like you can't expect anyone to see things the exact same way you do. And then with that, and this is a common one I see today, is you can only speak for yourself. I think today, and I've seen this, was it recently online? There was a post this girl made about, like, there was this couple having fun, doing something fun, and she got upset, like, oh, if anyone did that, and it's just like, why are you getting upset about something else that someone else like is enjoying? And then the response was kind of like, oh, it's good for them. But I think it wasn't. I think it was a lot of people would be offended by that. It's like, no, you would probably be offended by that. You can't really speak for anyone else. Now, this is different from speaking on behalf of someone, and this is what I think a lot of people try to do. However, being able to speak on behalf of someone there's agency there. That means that either you have known someone long enough to be able to speak on behalf of them, but at the same time, you're kind of owning that this is your opinion, that you think that what their opinion might be. You still have to own that. Or someone has granted you permission to speak on their behalf. And this is typically what we see in cases of legal counsel. Like lawyers typically speak on behalf of their clients. Or if there is a power of attorney, right? So those are circumstantial cases where you can speak on behalf of someone. You can't speak on behalf of people in a general sense. And a lot of times it seems like, if anything, that causes those people who are being spoken for to be offended by those who are speaking for them, at least from what I've seen. Being accountable does not mean absolving others of accountability. So know what belongs to you and what doesn't. Again, this is more focusing on what sort of things you are accountable for. If someone else does something, right, that upsets you, holding them accountable does not mean blaming them and being, oh, you hurt me by saying this. No, again, your emotion, own what you said. Hey, what you said felt this way to me. And then, the big thing I think here is being accountable still requires acts of grace and compassion, both towards yourself and others. people make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Others are going to make mistakes. The important thing is that once those mistakes are, brought to your awareness, whether you recognize them yourself after a time or someone brings them to your attention, this is not always going to be quick, especially if it's someone else brings it to your attention. You still have to reconcile it within yourself, but recognizing that, okay, like, I'm human, I make mistakes, I don't always show up the way I want to or the best way I can. Own those mistakes and do better next time. Like I said, owning your choices means being able to make better ones down the road. But yeah, so that is my video for today. I'm sure I will revisit this again in the future. Today was day 6 of my 30-day talk to the camera challenge. I'm probably gonna change the name of that because it's not just talking to the camera. This is actually trying to talk to you, whoever's actually watching this, and again, discuss things that I'm hoping will help. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below. If you have if you see things differently, share that and tell me, what you think of accountability in even different contexts, or, taking ownership of your choices, your experiences. And if you've had any sort of experiences that have helped shape you better. But leave those comments down below. If you like the video, hit like. If you dislike, you do you, boo. And then if you'd like to follow along for more videos, go ahead and hit subscribe. And I'll see you later. Peace.